Welcome to Blueprints of Disruption. I'm your host, Jessa McLean. Very rarely does a day go by that I'm not faced with the question of what we should do about the NDP. Or rather, what does the left do about electoral politics since the NDP has become an institution, run by consultants and hostile to reformists? This discussion started long before the recent downgrading of the party. It's a discussion that, frankly, has been going on for generations. If you listened to last week's re-upping of an episode with my dad, you would have heard about attempts by the Waffle Party to pull the NDP left and the work the Lewis family did to prevent that. I myself have been part of attempts at reform, or maybe you could call them revolt. Either way, you're not going to find me encouraging people to spend energies there. In fact, quite the opposite. So then the question becomes, if not the NDP, then what? Surely we don't support the Liberals or Conservatives here. I don't want to get started about the Green Party, but clearly folks are looking for alternatives. And that's exactly what drove our next guest to do what they did. Start their own party. We'll get their origin story, the hurdles they're facing, and what they think distinguishes them from the NDP. Their platform, they've kept it pretty focused. It boils down to three main points: food and shelter as a human right, tax the rich, and electoral reform. But the discussion goes well beyond policy points. The three candidates that have joined us from the Revolution Party are quite candid about the high chaos that comes from starting a political party from scratch. Lots of layers to figure out beyond enlisting volunteers and more candidates. They need to figure out how they're going to prevent things like leadership cults or ensure the elected are held accountable. What about registering with Elections Canada? Hearing the struggles of these infancy stages, but also the determination of the folks navigating it together, provides lessons for all of us. If you're a regular listener, you know this isn't an endorsement of a political party. I can hardly endorse electoral politics at all. But I know the audience includes people, like our guests, who are equally disappointed with the NDP, but don't want to give up on that realm of influence. And I support getting where we're going through many routes. This is why we do what we do here. Share stories from people on the ground doing the work. Whether that's intervening in elections or building blockades. Our library is full of blueprints of disruption. If you'd like to support our work, there are links in the show notes to become a patron, but sharing our content is also a huge boost. We're also looking to expand our team over here, so if you'd like to contribute to our mission of amplifying and equipping the grassroots, reach out to us on any of our platforms. And now, as promised, the Revolution Party of Canada. All right, we're here. Welcome, everybody. We've got three comrades in the studio with us today.
I am Ciara Loughlin. I am a candidate for the Revolution Party of Canada in the Parkland riding of Alberta. I don't look it currently because I just got back from an appointment, but I am usually a hardcore goth girl, and I am 100% proud about that. But yeah, this is my first foray into anything political. I haven't even done city level stuff, so
Big P political, because like everything we do is political.
yeah, big P political.
gotcha.
I'm one of those people that gets really annoyed at somebody that says I don't like to talk politics, because I'm like, everything is politics.
Yeah, I can't see someone who's like never been political joining the Revolution Party. So there had to have been a bit of a kernel there, but I get where you're coming from.
There definitely was.
My name is Mathieu Labelle-Tassé. I'm from the writing of Saint-Michel and Saint-Laurent in Montreal. I started in politics as being a pretty hard right-winger. And then after that, by reading and going to university, I became a full-on leftist. I tried to join Québec Solidaire into a provincial riding, but I decided to move on to the entire federal level now.
Interesting. Interesting. You saw my mouth open there when you mentioned you were a hard right winger, but the pipeline of education is real, thankfully. Troy, welcome.
Hello, my name is Troy Roberts. I'm the presumptive candidate for the Niagara South riding in Ontario. I'm a longtime socialist, and I've been searching for a political home for almost as long as I have been one. I haven't really managed to find anything that fits. As soon as I heard about the Revolution Party, I went straight to the website, checked it out, and I was a member minutes later. This place is exactly what I've always been searching for, and I decided to represent it because of that.
You guys are a real rainbow collection of political background from seemingly none, Kira, some, but none, the right wing to, Solidaire, kind of worked your way through the system. And Troy, a lot of people can resonate with your not having a political home. I mean, now we'll talk about where you're at now and why that excites you so much. But, from a leftist perspective, you folks even say it in the press conference you gave during the federal election. I will link that to the episode. Folks need to watch that as they really go into detail. But you mentioned kind of being the alternative to the NDP for leftists. So everyone's seen the implosion. I mean, we saw it coming before the election, but now it's official. So the discussion naturally goes to what do we do now? And I see some comrades trying to reform the NDP, so maybe they want to save this episode for later. I don't know, but then there's a lot of people who are just done. They don't want to give up electoral politics, though. And they want to know, more about the Revolution Party, but also, what it took to create something from scratch. That's a big jump to just... People seem to be either, stuck in that reform stage. Some people just leave altogether, right? I'm kind of drifted away from electoral politics altogether. But then there's you folks, and you've done something about it. So how did the Revolution Party come about? I asked you for your origin story.
It was about 3 years ago when Jamie, he was the bald fellow with a beard in both of the press conferences. Yeah, it was 3 years ago when he started. He just kind of got the name. He bought the domain, and his mom was like, "You're crazy," and he was like, "Whatever." And I think it was only within the last year or so that they actually started looking for members, and they really got people going. I think the origin story of the Revolution Party of Canada is it started in Jamie's room.
They all got to start somewhere,
right? They got to start somewhere. At least it wasn't a garage.
It sounds like so cliche. You do have to start somewhere, but that is what stops people from doing something. I mean, a lot of things do. The lack of electoral reform and the struggle of a small upstart party trying to make impact electorally.
Oh, yeah.
But just the daunting process of, rather than stepping into an institution, no matter how marred it is, seems a lot easier than starting from the basement and trying to build from there. But you've grown quite a lot since just Jamie.
So quickly. Yeah. I think we're up to about 50 candidates confirmed right now.
So these are folks that are just ready to run in a federal election, well, whether it be 5 months from now or 4 years from now.
Yes, they're all ready.
Yeah, basically. Really, as a party, the stuff that we're working on currently is we're getting our inaugural caucus sorted out. Right now, it is high chaos in the party, right? It's very disorganized. It's hard to tell what's going on, but with all of the planning that's going on, we're getting meetings together for the various regions, for various candidates, instead of just all one meeting like we were doing before. Yeah, the inaugural caucus is currently our primary focus, and we're 3 to 6 months on that, although I would add another 3 months on top of that. People tend to underestimate how long a project takes.
Indeed. So it's your goal to kind of create a shadow cabinet of sorts?
Essentially. So what we're going to be doing is the inaugural caucus is going to be what's responsible for voting on literally everything that we're going to do as a party. Might add some red tape, but we're also making it so that our manifesto and our platform is the absolute, right? It can be changed, obviously, but it will require a majority vote. we're going to be introducing pretty tight term limits for leaders of the party, and we're going to have a triumvirate.
What's that?
That is when 3 people are in the lead, and they work within, or they work with one another to lead the party or entity or of some sort. So we're trying our absolute best to make sure that this is not going to become a one-person party.
All right, I'm down with like abolishing leadership cults. Have you ever, has anybody here ever experienced this structure before? You know, with 3
Nope, can't say I
shared
have.
leaders. What did you call it again?
A triumvirate.
I did, but it wasn't 3. It was 2 party. It's
Were you in the Green Party?
no, the Quebec Solidaire. They have the male candidates and the female candidates. They support something that's called the parité, which I do not know the word in English.
Gender parity.
Yeah, gender parity. Yeah, and they want to try to have like equal amount of women candidates as equal amount of male candidates, and they want to have that amount of people inside as candidates, and they want to win that way.
Do folks approach equity that way?
Not to that same one-to-one level, I don't think. We are trying to get as much representation from as many different communities as we can, like actively so, but we're not breaking it down to the math. Right? Just trying to attract as much diversity as we can.
Yeah, I will say I'm a lesbian. I haven't faced any issues within the party. I've not had any of those people that go up to you and say, you're only a lesbian because you haven't been with the right guy.
That's a low bar, Kira.
It is a low bar, but unfortunately,
that's a low bar.
Unfortunately, that is the bar of reality, right? This is just kind of the situation that we're in as people who are part of the 2S LGBTQIA. Oh, and there's also quite a few trans people who have joined as well, and it's been amazing to see that. There's been a lot of support for the trans folk in the community. We've seen a lot of women join. Honestly, like, it hasn't really been something that's crossed my mind because it hasn't seemed like we needed it, right? We're a very, very diverse bunch, it feels like.
Did you experience the most growth during the federal election, or were you a robust team going into it?
The most growth we got was right after our initial press conference, and Steve Boots made a video on us.
We owe a lot to Steve Boots.
I joined because of Steve as well, so.
Right? There's so many people who have joined because of Steve. Yeah, and both of the videos he's made, we've had a huge influx of people from them.
Did all of you run as candidates, like a campaign?
We only ran the 5, but next time it's going to be quite a lot more than that.
Yeah, but they weren't seen as the Revolutionary Party. They were seen as independents.
Yeah, the party itself didn't get registered in time.
That is what folks are daunted by, though, too, right? So how do I start a new party with Elections Canada? How do I start taking in donations? How do we become an official party down the road? I mean, there are parts of starting a new party that folks are just...
It's a very esoteric thing.
Yeah, because it's like chicken and the egg as well, right? You really need somebody who can put a lot of hours into doing a lot of aspects about partisan politics to, get into an election and be effective. But at the same time, that requires funds, and you have to grow before you can even start taking in funds. But, participating in the election definitely isn't limited to any kind of party status. And we definitely know it's not limited to official party status. So I get it.
I mean, just look at the longest ballot initiative.
Yeah, I mean, you still went through the process and probably learned so many lessons from the federal election as a new party. What really threw you for a loop, if anything?
For me, it's how ignored by media we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in both of our press conferences, we didn't get a single question from the media that was present there. We haven't gotten any other media attention besides independent, right? Like on YouTube or on here.
It's a hidden card, like it's a hidden card. Like, I know that the media will not want to talk to us unless we do something major, or unless we grab their attention, or unless we grab the attention of everybody. Like, when I mean everybody, I mean like everybody.
One of the things I was impressed by was by how well some of our candidates did. We had one of our candidates get triple-digit votes from a party that...
Yeah, Gregory Bell.
Greg got, I think, 111, I believe you said, something like that. But a fair few for somebody that nobody's ever heard of. One of the things that I believe is that when people hear our message and the things we have to say and the reasons that we're saying them and they hear it clearly, I think it's going to be really, really popular. And I feel like that initial result sort of bolsters my opinion there.
You sat Greg down and have him completely dissect his campaign for you folks to replicate?
If I remember correctly, Greg didn't really run much of a campaign. I think he was mostly grassroots within the Edmonton area. And yeah, he still managed to get triple digits out of that. And yeah, as far as I'm aware, it was fully grassroots on his part. Just door knocking.
Yeah, well, I mean, ask him what he was saying to people at the door and how he managed to even have like that many, especially as an independent. So it wasn't even, the word revolution that drew people to check that box, right? They seem to have gone in there with his name in mind to vote an independent. So we have a communist, well, there's communists all over the place running, but, in Barrie, they max out at 100 votes and they have an entire established party. People understand what the name means, even if they don't have any idea who the candidate is. So, there might be secrets there in Gregory's campaign that I would do a post-mortem, from as well as the other candidates. But what's going to make the next one different for you folks? You think you'll be registered as a party and be able to run under a banner?
Yeah, that's the plan. Right now, what we're telling candidates who are just antsy for things to do is get out there, do the grassroots stuff. We have people participating in the Alberta protests against the separatism referendums. We have candidates just meeting together in general, getting to know one another, trying to operate on the same ground. At least that's what's happening here in Edmonton. And generally speaking, we're just encouraging every candidate to be as grassroots as possible. Get the name out there, do anything you can just to first make people less scared of Revolution Party of Canada, because it's a name that we have gotten a lot of pushback on so far, of a lot of people being like, that's a scary name. You guys are crazy.
But I love it. It triggers the libs. I mean,
it does. It gets a lot of people a little riled up, and that's kind of, there's some of us in the party who really like that, and some of us who are like, oh, we probably shouldn't do that.
I'm a big proponent of the name specifically because of the idea of the scary bit. We have more and more people that are, I mean, look what happened to the NDP, right? More and more people are, they don't want the status quo. They know things are going wrong. They know things are going poorly. They want some kind of change. And a lot of people just don't really know what kind of change to go for. So when we talk about revolution, we're talking about a massive change from the status quo. And again, we've got all these policies and opinions that I think people are really going to like. And I think a lot of people are going to decide that our kind of revolution is what they want.
Well, let's test your theory, Troy. You folks ran on a kind of a nice, simple 3-point. I mean, it's not as cut and dry as 3 points. They go a little deeper than that. But your platform was 3 major points. You folks each want to run through one. I'm sure you've done the spiel. And, what makes you revolutionary?
Let's see. I mean, food and water as a human right. That's a big one. I think a lot of food deserts. I think of small towns that have been gutted by companies moving away and they can't afford food. It's difficult to get food in. I think of up north communities, Nunavut, Yukon, where you see prices from there. It's like $40 for a watermelon, just because there's no profit to be made from doing it any other way. The idea that food and water should be available to everybody at all times seems very, very basic to me because of the whole staying alive thing.
Yeah. An important thing to note as well is that we want to get this codified in the Canadian Charter of Rights so that it cannot be revoked by whatever next party comes after us.
Into the charter?
Yeah.
The right to specifically to food and water?
Yeah. Food, water, and shelter.
One of the biggest problems with the charter is that it doesn't secure any economic rights, right? Like everything can be trumped or kind of whisked away based on public safety and the lack of funds. We know there isn't a lack of funds, but the governments are allowed to just simply say there are. So the charter is perhaps not always the tool people wished it could be. But surely I think folks will agree with you on food, shelter, water being secured. One of the ideas I drew from your website that I think folks will find interesting is the idea of nationalizing food banks.
Yeah, so that would just be, I think, the start of it, because that's not a long-term solution. But the beginning with nationalizing food banks, I think, is a great idea because so many food banks are so wildly underfunded.
A lot of folks would suggest perhaps nationalizing grocery chains, the food supply.
Yeah.
These are kind of baby steps to get us there.
Yeah, so the babyest of baby steps is pretty much if we can get electoral reform through, if we can help push that through with the agreement between liberals and the NDP or whatever ends up happening, then our next goal is to introduce a wealth flight tax of some kind. Like in the wild scenario that we got elected as a majority party, wealth flight tax would be the first thing that we did, followed by taxing the wealthy, which is the other or one of our other three priorities, which is making them pay their fair share, introducing new tax brackets like 51% income tax on people who make over $1 million a year.
That's often the answer there to people like, oh, if you tax the rich, they'll just leave, right? So that's your solution.
And then it would also give us the ability to issue warrants for their arrest on Interpol. Because then they would be evading Canadian taxes and such like that.
Where are you folks on policing?
So you start with defund the police at a minimum, right? Move a lot of the police budgets into other areas that are better able to handle some of the jobs that the police do now that they're not good at. You don't need a guy with a gun showing up at a medical emergency, for example.
Or somebody having a mental crisis and having like 5 policemen coming to your place because the person is mentally unstable, instead of bringing somebody that can, bring a freaking social worker. When, like, policemen, all they have is a hammer, and they treat everything like if it's a nail.
Well, and you won't get any revolution with a well-trained or well-funded police force, my friends.
Well, they need to be trained differently.
With the budget they already have, yeah? Because a lot of like the NDP and a lot of progressives will do this. They will say that it's just kind of different training, that it's not a systemic issue. Like they weren't here to create, like just to protect capital and further marginalize people.
Yeah, it's a systemic issue.
Troy, you got to start with the first point. There's two more. Save electoral reform for last.
We have tax the rich.
That's right. How can I forget that one?
Yeah. So as I brought up, there was the wealth flight tax, and then introducing a larger income tax, but that's for just the rich, not the super wealthy, right? That's not for Galen Weston Jr. The wealth flight tax is for Galen Weston Jr., so he can't just fuck off to one of his Scottish castles. But in those cases, we want to have a scaling annual wealth tax on billionaires. We have on our website, we have a button called Eat the Rich, and it is just a list of every Canadian billionaire.
Oh, yeah, the wall of shame.
Yeah, the wall of shame. It starts with Elon Musk at the top, Galen Weston Jr., and everybody else. Because Canadian billionaires are incredibly good at being quiet about how rich they are. Right? They're very sneaky little bastards.
Yeah, we don't celebrate them in the same way, thankfully. No, we don't. Right? Like, they lay low. I mean, Dragon's Den we have, right? Or one of those shows has sharks or something. I don't know. But they've got a show of their own. But otherwise, yes, they have a pretty... Galen Weston just takes the hits for all of them. Elon, no one even remembers he's Canadian. So I thought that was funny. He's kind of the first face just to remind people we can't disown him. Like, and be like, oh, those crazy South Africans or Yankees. It's like,
yeah,
you're going to own a little bit of this one.
Because he's got the most money.
Yeah.
Right. And then we want to also introduce surtaxes on businesses where CEOs make more than 10 times their lowest paid employee that can scale up to 100%. And that will just hopefully make a big difference in the wealth or the income gap between, minimum wage and, well, Galen Weston fucking Jr.
Yeah. Matthew, do you want to talk about the last point there? Electoral reform is something you folks talk a lot about. I get it.
Yeah, yeah, because one of the big problems that we have in this country is something that's called strategic voting.
I've never heard of that.
Oh my God, you never heard of
No,
that?
tell me,
It's
what is
like
it?
it forces Canada in picking two parties that they literally hate. You have literally a bowl of shit and another bowl of shit. And basically, it forces people only to choose for two parties because if you don't choose for one party, you're gonna help the other one win.
And you get shamed for it too.
Yeah, and get shamed as well for it. Like if you say like, "Yeah, I decided to vote for NDP because I believe in what they stand for." Oh no, you're helping the conservative to win your riding. Or oh yeah, I'm gonna vote for the Bloc because I'm a French person and I don't like how my government is running in Ottawa and they never tend the needs of Quebec. Oh, you're helping the conservatives win in Quebec. All of that. Look, any type of electoral reform would be good,
Yeah.
but apparently the one that we have is proportional voting, so that way anybody can have a anybody can have a voice. Most of the time, what happens is that whoever's in power, let's just say like if it's the Liberals, the western part of the country starts being unhappy or starts saying like, oh, they're marginalizing us, oh, they're not listening to us. And if someone of the conservative win, then Quebec and the Maritimes starts yelling and bickering, saying like, ah, nobody listens to us.
Can I just say, let's normalize not calling Alberta the West. We are not the West. As a lifetime Albertan, we are Midwest at best. Okay?
That's too many categories for us.
It's just, oh God, the separatism going on in Alberta right now.
I can't handle it. It's like, can we all just be Turtle
Unbelievable.
Island? Or everyone I think can understand, especially there's already proponents for electoral reform on the left. I think that's a big sticking point for a lot of people. Even liberals wanted it. I mean, it was what Trudeau promised and originally brought him to power.
Do you want to know why Trudeau won his first election in Quebec? Like why Quebec was so red when he started running?
Why?
Because one, he's from a dynasty that was loved by the boomers in Quebec. And secondly, he introduced electoral reform. He said that it was going to be the last election with electoral reform. He won. He had 10 years to do it. He didn't do it. He sat on it and he said like, oh, it's too hard. Or the Senate. Look, he was in power and he knew that if he would have done electoral reform, he would have hurt his own party, hurt the conservative, hurt Quebec, hurt all the parties that had like this big proportional group and help all the other smaller parties. So no matter who's going to be into power, they don't want to shoot themselves in the foot. They just don't want to do that.
See, I would argue, yes, all that, yes, but the NDP, for the same reason you folks understand how badly you need electoral reform to make a greater impact, right? Like that must be just so friggin' obvious, especially going through a federal election, right? And seeing how hard it is to eat out space there.
Oh, yeah.
But the NDP is threatened by parties like you. Yeah, I mean, you've openly declared yourself as a threat to the NDP, right? So your growth or your ability to get a foothold into the electoral system with electoral reform is a threat to the NDP. I'm not sure if they had maintained themselves as the only leftist party and an actual leftist party, then yes, like that would help the smaller parties. But the way that they've done it, there's so many people ready to take up this position that you have where you're like, fine, we'll do it ourselves. And under electoral reform, that becomes a lot more promising. So it's why the NDP have never really fully put their shoulders into getting that done. Jagmeet even admitted it was like he tried to get it as part of the supply agreement and, but it was like half-hearted. it definitely wasn't a priority. And like, this is coming from a party that had already promised it. So you think it would have been an easy sell, but no, nobody ever intended on really doing it. So I understand why that's like a cornerstone of what you folks are demanding, because I mean, it'll help make all this work a little more worthwhile, right? Yeah. Maybe brighten the prospects.
And it's just a more democratic way of doing things as well. Like, first past the post is inherently anti-democratic, and we are very pro-democracy.
It's funny. Jamie says the same thing over and over, and it's that he wishes the NDP would steal our entire platform and run on that, right? It's not that we, as the Revolution Party of Canada, want to win. It's that we want our policies to win. We want what we stand for to be what gets put through, what makes lives of Canadians better, right? And if the fucking financier ghouls behind the NDP have to fall for that, then yeah, absolutely. You know, maybe they shouldn't be so set in their ways and thinking that, oh, we have to keep moving towards the center instead of further left like everybody wants.
Well, I mean, if you can demonstrate success, or any other leftist institutions start to demonstrate success with a different strategy, perhaps. I think a lot of them are just so wealthy in the institution that they've created, and the mechanisms now there are so anti-democratic that it's almost impossible for them to reform themselves, so that even if they did say, you guys have great ideas and you're right, it's selling, right? Like, look at that. Look, you're gaining traction. I'll do this marketing plan too, right? Like, because they don't actually believe, like, it sells, it keeps us relevant. That's enough for us. They're so poisoned in the way that they operate now that it's really not healthy. So how do you folks internally differ? I don't know if any of you have been inside the NDP to know how it might be different, but Troy says, we believe in democracy, or, that is what we're about. How else does that manifest inside your party?
Well, we don't charge a membership fee. That's the biggest one. We do not charge a membership fee for either regular members or candidates. There is no fees. Another big one is that we will not be accepting donations at the federal limit, which I believe is $1,100 per person. I mean, the talks that we've been having, we're thinking about like maybe $100 per person. And even that is like, everybody's a little, ooh, that's a little high. We're trying to get money out of the equation as much as possible. We understand that we're going to need money to run. We fully understand that, but we don't want it to be the reason that we run, right? We want the reason that we run to be making Canada better, making the lives of fellow Canadians better. And, hopefully being a bastion that the rest of the world looks to and goes, hey, they did socialism and it's working.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I think of is, you see in the news, I'm seeing articles right now about how the NDP leadership is trying to fix it their way to get the candidate that they want to be leader, as opposed to actually going to the party. Everything we do is going to the party. There is no upper echelon of control. Everything comes down to a vote. Like, all the policies, all the candidates are going to be primaries. If there's more than one candidate, the leadership is going to be voted on just right down at membership level. There isn't going to be any sort of centralized from the top control. We're from the bottom up every time.
Well, that is surely different than the NDP, who are highly centralized.
Yeah, and also the NDP, they're doing their little leadership race right now. And I saw what you had to do, and the amount of money. I don't think I have that amount of money.
We're supposed to raise that amount of money. It's a test of, it's to keep poor folks out. It's to keep grassroots candidates out. But they'll tell you it's to, test your prowess as a leader, and part of politics to them. And most of the all the major parties, is your ability to raise funds. So surely these points set you apart in that regard. You talk about, being happy, or at least that's what Jamie said, but you folks nodded along there, that if the NDP would just take, or, hell, the ruling Liberals took your platform, all right? Let's just
take our fucking platform.
Sure. How do you help folks get there? So what I mean is, where will your energy go between elections to make space or progress on things like the 3 key points that you folks drove home there? You know, you could start with electoral reform or any of them. Like, some of them are really kind of, they're radical ideas, they're revolutionary ideas. They're not like things we haven't heard, but really right now there's no space for it, and you're not going to be a majority party, right? And like, that was one of the flaws, I think, of the NDP's campaign at the beginning. They kind of shifted, but you know, we knew the NDP wouldn't rule. And he kept speaking like that. And I'll be honest, your website reads like that. I would change it. The way you say, we will do this, we will do that. Like, that's so far off for you to be able to, you know, implement these policies. You need to explain to people how you're going to get there without majority power, right? We needed to hear from the NDP, like, here's how I'll behave with 24 seats. Unfortunately, it, you know, in reality, he should have been like, hey, even if you give us 12 seats, here's what we can do with it. Here's what we're going to do with your donations and your energy to make sure that the Liberals don't do X, Y, and Z, right? A lot of it is defense too at this point, right? And they don't mobilize people to this end, right? So we don't get any closer to electoral reform because they don't do anything beyond say it on the floor. So what can you folks do, even if you're not on the floor, but you are taking the energy of folks, right? They still want to get to that spot. How are you going to do that?
I would think that, especially at the beginning when we're small, keeping the message out there, you talk about talking about it on the floor, that's one thing, but talking about it in the community as well. The more that message gets spread and the more people are talking about it, the more pressure that puts on even a majority government, and the more people are protesting against things that they understand because they've heard what we said, or they're in the streets because they're fired up about something that we said. There needs to be a bunch of us talking that all the time, everywhere we can, even if we don't have any power.
Yeah, in fewer words, we want to shift the Overton window over towards the left, where it's okay and expected to talk about these things, where yes, the government empowered, the minority or majority will feel the pressure from people just talking about, oh, actually, I really do want a universal basic income. Why the hell does Galen Weston Jr. have more money than anyone could ever spend in their single lifetime or even generations of their family, right? Why I'm struggling to buy bread in the morning. I need a universal basic income. But right now, that's not what people are talking about. The Overton window is shifted further to the right than we would really want it to be.
The ideas are also out there, right? So I imagine all of you, well, we got Alberta, Niagara region here in Ontario, Montreal. So, you know, Fair Vote Canada, I don't want to shade anyone working for them. I mean, they're there, they're doing their thing. They're going for electoral reform. That's an example. But I mean, some of the other issues that you folks talk about and that you support, they're being championed by people too already, right? Probably somewhere in your community. Are you planning on working with them or amplifying their work? Or is there ways, you know, when you say, I didn't kind of press you on it earlier, you used the term like be as grassroots as possible. You're talking to a whole lot of like activists and organizers who know exactly what it means to kind of work in their communities. What exactly is that going to kind of look like from a party perspective, right? So again, we'll kind of hate to compare you constantly, but the parties generally operate with riding associations. Traditionally, those riding associations just prepare for the next election. They might have some fundraisers here and there, maybe a town hall to push the party messaging, right? Like if they're pushing on education, they'll have education town halls and do what you're saying, kind of pull people in, have them hear what they have to say, and hopefully that will draw them into the fold even further. Do you have plans to kind of replicate that? Or, you know, the flip side, I think, is working with organizations that are already doing the work that these ideas will naturally percolate from.
Yeah, so we are very intent on working with organizations. with everything that Jamie has been doing as interim leader, he has been wildly busy and hard to get a hold of recently. But I think he's been working with a lot of local communities across Ontario to just get things going, to show that, hey, we support this. We're a political party. We're going to be an official political party. We support you and we want to see you go forward. In my case, like, I'm in a very deep blue riding. The moment it existed, it became blue, and it has never been anything else. And I'm in Alberta, which itself is incredibly deep blue. I don't think I'm going to win a seat from the Parkland riding, but at the very least, I can, talk to people in my little city of Spruce Grove and say, hey, things can be better. We don't have to just vote blue because they're the team that you play for, right? It's not a hockey game anymore. Politics has never been a hockey game. Let's stop treating it like it is. We need these things, and we need them now, or we need them to be fought for. So in my case, my work as a candidate between elections is very much going to be getting my name out there, even if it's potentially dangerous to me in some aspect or another. It feels like I have a moral obligation to stand up for the Revolution Party where nobody else would.
I'll say too, with the coalition building, with all the other groups out there that are doing this work, we've already reached out to a bunch of them. We're planning to reach out to as many as we can. And one of the things that we have as well is we're seeking power to actually influence change from within the government, whereas they're more just about getting the message out. I know I just talked about the importance of getting the message out, especially when we're new, if we have any power. But it's a good mix. I've belonged to other organizations that were just about like trying to spread awareness and trying to endorse candidates, things like that. And I got frustrated because it didn't feel like there was any attempt to actually gain power to affect change. And that's one of the things we're trying to do here eventually.
Do you think great change will come through the ballot box?
I don't think it's impossible. I talked about an upwards loop not that long ago. I think that could be the way it goes. I'm not a wizard or anything, but it's possible.
If people really feel like they're getting behind what we're trying to push for, we could see success in the ballot box, right? But before then, we really have to put the heat under the pants of the NDP before they are completely dissolved, for example. Or we have to talk to Bloc Québécois because they're the next highest seats, and we have to do everything that we can to affect change in the ways that we are able to, which currently is not federally. And I think that is something that we have to accept, is that we don't currently have the power to make federal change, but we can run municipal candidates or we can run provincial candidates. That's mainly down to individuals more than the party right now. Until after our inaugural caucus, we're not planning on anything relating to like organizations or provincial party organizations. Sorry. We're primarily focused on the federal party right now, but once the inaugural caucus is set up and we're off to the races with the federal, we might start thinking about provincial presences.
Don't stretch yourselves too thin, folks. I do that too often. Where could you use the most help? I want to say getting yourself registered as a party. There's probably bureaucratic items that y'all need to take care of, but are you doing a good job of drawing resources from all these folks that have found you, whether through booths or because of the campaigns that were run during this last federal election? Where are you putting these people, and where do you still need help?
I'm going to say that as of yet, we're not doing it well.
We need to have 90% of the country covered. So we need more candidates. We're doing good. Like, we have around 50. We're getting close to 50. Volunteers are also going to be a big help because they're going to help those candidates knock on doors, getting those grassroots, getting that word out, getting that message out. I think those are the two most impactful help that we can get.
Matthew kind of gave like a kind of broad overview of like the things you need most is candidates and volunteers. But there are a lot of things to do, right? Social media to run, meetings, you're building a caucus, so there's administrative things that happen. Do you have a lot of these positions filled, or are you still looking to grow that core? I know you're not centralized, but you need people to take responsibility to organize folks across the country like that, right? So
we're looking for people for doing that. We're looking for the people on the back end. We're looking for that core, somebody for social media. We have candidates that have position like that, but candidates also have to run their campaigns. They also have to get their message out there. So they can't always do that job. Like, I think even one of our candidates is the one that's going to put our website in French eventually when that gets done. Yeah, and he's a candidate, by the way. Like, Marwan is a candidate. Even I'm helping him with the French version, and yeah, like we need volunteers to be in that back end and to fill out those roles so the candidate can actually just think on running, getting the message out there, and knocking on doors and getting those grassroots support.
Yeah, like in my case, I'm a member of both our marketing and social media teams, where we're currently waiting for the messaging team to kind of get themselves together, because we're very intrinsically connected with the messaging of the party. We don't want to be releasing videos where one of us is just like, you know what, I actually don't like universal basic income all that much, but here's why the party likes it. We have to make sure that we're very consistent in that. And right now, to be 100% honest, we are a chaotic mess. Like, right after the election happened, we saw a huge influx of people that we just were not ready to take on at that time. And since then, we have been 100% focused on organization, because we are so disorganized. It is kind of wild. So we have teams coming together for party organization. We have teams coming together for the shadow cabinet. We have teams coming together for the inaugural caucus, for social media, stuff like that. We're getting there, but it's a slow process, right? We're trying to make sure that everybody is okay with what we're doing, because we're not a one-person party. We're not built from, the top down. We're built from the bottom up. So we got to make sure everybody standing at the bottom or sitting at the bottom is okay holding everybody else up, right?
We've all been there as organizers, right? Where there's been these moments where everything that we've done is doing what it's supposed to do, but we still weren't ready for it. Like, you peak, you get a lot of engagement, you stir a lot of people's interest, and then how you capture and hold that interest, it's hard to onboard people effectively. So that was part of my question. So, like, all these skill sets that you need to run a party in whatever way that you're going to do, they're going to come from all of these people that saw you through a Boots video or saw one of your candidates, and they're going to have this secret superpower that you didn't even know you needed, but you do, like someone who knows how to get signs in frozen ground. It's just like a silly example, but in your core group, there'll be so many skill sets, video editing and all these things. So yeah, get your shit together, people, because you've got a lot of excited people that, want to put their energy here, and you could do really great things as long as you kind of are able to multiply that power, right? Like, a volunteer isn't a volunteer until they have a task. Right.
Yeah. As a D&D DM, the way that I'm looking at it is currently we're building the paddock that we're going to herd all the cats into.
We're in this political time where the liberals are going to do everything the conservatives wanted to do anyway, except for maybe attack trans healthcare and a few other social items. So I think we're far off from another election, federal election. So you folks have breathing space to create your caucus, the paddock, all the infrastructure you're going to need. May I suggest you talk to people who have been in the thick of it, like Matthew with the Solidaire, Quebec Solidaire, and folks who've gone through the ringer with the NDP, and find out where the pitfalls are as you start to really solidify that core.
Yeah, there's quite a few of us who are like really hoping that with the NDP currently imploding, we're going to start seeing some NDP candidates just kind of, quietly shuffle over.
So, some candidates, yeah. You got some MPs who lost their seat. I think a lot of them are hanging out in the wings to see how this leadership thing takes place. But what you do have out there are people who have run these little mini infrastructures, even though they're kind of colonial structures and they're not all that healthy, but uh, that are just done. Like entire riding associations have walked away. The people that run them have just walked away from the NDP entirely. They've been treasurers, they've been social media managers, they've run campaigns. You know how many clipboards I have? I have everything you need over in that little corner to run a fucking political campaign, including a bunch of buttons with my name on it. That I never want to see again. So these people will come and help you build, but they need to know you are different from the NDP. So yeah, like I love you named a few things democratically that make you stand out. Policy wise, I think it was kind of obvious to folks. I mean, deep down, the NDP would advocate for some of these things. It is deep in the policy book and members' hearts. But to get somebody to say it on camera is another thing. I mean, before we started recording, we were talking about their refusal to say, like, sex work is work when someone tries to shame them for having an OnlyFans model on their bus and doing promos for them. So they're a long way away, and you folks are definitely distinguishing yourself.
Like throwing somebody under the bus, what the NDP did, that was horrible. And our party is never going to do that.
Yeah.
Well, you might, but you got to have mechanisms in place to be able to hold people accountable. It's like just like our politics, where it's like 4 years, cross your fingers, maybe sign a petition or two or whatnot, but otherwise no recourse. That is another problem within the NDP, that no one is answerable to the members, really, who make those decisions. So someone does make a bad decision, a bad call on the campaign. You can't go to the party for everything on the fly, right? Some people will make bad decisions as leaders, as people in key positions. It's how you folks will deal with those mistakes that is going to set you apart as well. Because even the Communist Party of Canada had issues. It's probably why, Kira even had this kind of disclaimer on her experience as a lesbian within the group, right? Because there's been institutions where shit happens that is a microcosm of the greater society, and the circle that exists around partisan politics closes ranks and don't deal with it, and these aren't healthy places for people like us.
Absolutely.
We're already considering a system in which the members can, in adequate circumstances, just remove a candidate from the party. Not necessarily as a member, but just get them out. Get them off the spotlight, get them out of candidacy and put somebody else in who will do a better job of it, right?
It's so necessary. You said it yourself. Things are going to happen. The big question that I've always asked is, when things happen, what do you do about it?
Right. Like it's a zero tolerance thing, where if somebody is openly against one of our policies or the policies that members have voted on, because we've also been completely open to members introducing policies. We didn't actually have anything relating to disability until somebody came in and was like, hey, you guys really need to focus a lot on disability. And everybody was like, oh, yeah, actually, we do.
I'm the one that pushed that.
Yeah. And like, people have been individually coming in. We have a channel on our server where people can suggest policy. We've gotten so many really good policy suggestions that we're going to be looking at during the inaugural caucus. There's all these things that we can do. There are ideas that people have already, right? That I'm never going to have, that Troy is never going to have, that Mathieu is never going to have. But we're always trying to be open to those ideas.
Yeah. Like if I ever do a town hall, I'm going to ask the people, so what are your grievances right now? Like, where's your pain? How can I help you? Because even if I win my writing, I'm still going to have those town halls, and I'm still going to see, like, I'm still going to want to see my candidates. Not my candidate, but the constituents. I'm not going to do like, oh, I won this riding and I know that I'm safe into it, I'm just gonna disappear and not appear into any debate or anything like that. I'm just gonna disappear at Ottawa and say goodbye, sayonara.
Yeah, I cannot imagine willingly doing that while also getting paid $180,000 a year, right? When you become an MP and you have an income like that, you should be doing everything in your power to talk to your constituents, right? Because they voted you in. You have to keep up to date on what they want from you, right? You can't just be like, hey, my assistant is handling all of my emails. I occasionally see one or two. I'm mostly disconnected because I work in Ottawa.
One of the things that I got from the Atlantic Regional Communists, who are on a similar path as you folks, but less interested in electoral victories or even electoral work at the moment. But one of the things that I admired about how they were going to build, you know, the antithesis of what they had experienced so far was like what you say, you know, should I become MP to be held accountable, to be in constant contact? That's how they structured their party within, too, right? So anyone holding the treasurer position or all these other kind of key roles. I know you don't want to be centralized, but again, there's going to be key roles that need to be filled. They'll have to make decisions sometimes without the party, but creating mechanisms where they were constantly having to answer to the larger mass, right? To the membership. So volunteers, candidates, all on equal footing at that point, and being able to ask hard questions of the decisions that had been made, right? But it's one thing to have it as a mantra you say out loud, you know, this is how we're going to be and we're not going to be, but it's finding what the actual mechanisms are, what that structure looks like, what those meetings end up unfolding like, to make sure that it remains democratic, that it remains linear or decentralized even, right? So it'd be interesting. I would like to check in with you folks perhaps a year from now and see the hiccups that you'll end up having to go through, how you manage them, and, you know, how much closer you folks are to realizing, you know, ideal outcomes there.
By then, we'll have had our initial inaugural
caucus.
We'll have a lot of things more sorted out by then. We'll have a lot more of the organization in place. Touching in again sounds great.
We will have a real group of leaders, not just interims.
Well, you know, you talk about term limits too. So rotation. Remember, the Greeks used to pull lots, right? So it's like, Troy, you are the treasurer this year. And, you know, like it's, there's all sorts of ways you can structure yourself to make it fair and equitable and whatnot. It's quite the adventure to start from scratch, right? And you're going to be wrong. You're going to do something you wish you hadn't, and you'll learn from it. But what a roller coaster it's going to be building a party like this. I hope, you know, the audience here is your target audience. So in terms of getting your word out, I may not have the reach of Boots, right? Because he's done a lot for you folks. That is great to hear. I hope you've kind of told him that. I'm sure you have. But yeah, we'll get you a little bit of reach too. And in the show notes, folks can see how they can get in touch with the party and volunteer or just start to find out more about them. Any parting words, folks? We'll start with Kira.
God, I hope we get something. You know, I hope that something comes of this, because as Troy said much earlier on in the show, there have been so many examples of somebody or a party trying to be left and just not doing well enough, right? We need something. That's why I want people to steal the damn platform. Just give us something.
Give me anything.
Yeah.
I'll do my best, friend. I'll do my best, comrade. Matthew.
Me? Join the revolution. Come and speak to us. We're not a closed party. We take criticism from everybody, even if it hurts us. Like we even took criticism from a Steve Boots video, like in the comments, basically. And I also heard some right wingers actually criticizing us, and some of them were valid. And no, I mean, like, seriously, sometimes just hearing what people have to say actually helps, and we're going to take criticism where it is, and we're going to adjust.
Gotta figure it out somehow.
We're new at this.
Thank you, folks, for joining us and sharing that brutal honesty too. I love from Kira, that it was just like, it's high chaos. I wrote it down on my notes there, and I know that feeling. I absolutely know that feeling. It is. I'm getting a buzz from it over here. I know what you guys are going through. I wish you a world of luck. I will be checking in with you. I find this very intriguing, and I'm sure the audience did as well. So thank you very much. That is a wrap on another episode of Blueprints of Disruption. Thank you for joining us. Blueprints of Disruption is an independent production operated cooperatively. You can follow us on Twitter at BP of Disruption. If you'd like to help us continue disrupting the status quo, please share our content, and if you have the means, consider becoming a patron. Not only does our support come from the progressive community, so does our content. So reach out to us and let us know what or who we should be amplifying. So until next time, keep disrupting.